Welcome to the fourth episode in a Legendarium series about medieval trade. In part 4, Crusaders and Traders, we will talk about how the Crusades helped to stimulate trade in Europe. In the year 1095 AD, Pope Urban II delivered a thunderous speech to the Council of Clermont, in which he chastised the assembled notables for allowing the Holy Land to remain under non-Christian rule. His words so electrified the assembly that they began to shout Deus Vult, or God wills it. Some men cut pieces of red cloth in the shape of crosses and stitched them onto their tunics on the spot. Thus began the First Crusade, the first in a series of 9 wars by Christian Europe against the foreign states which controlled Jerusalem, where Christ was crucified. For the next 200 years, Crusaders waged war to keep control of the Holy Land. While these wars ultimately ended in failure, the presence of the Crusader states in Southwest Asia for 2 centuries would help to change Europe. For a start, the Crusades helped to wear down the feudal order which emerged after the early Middle Ages. Many nobles died, and plenty more mortgaged their land to the crown or the church to pay for their expeditions to the Holy Land. Additionally, European conquest of Muslim-held territory in southern Italy, Sicily, and the Iberian Peninsula gave them access to new knowledge, which became known as the New Logic. This led to new ideas about medicine and astronomy, which helped to trigger the Renaissance of the 12th century. Trade had already been growing fast in the eastern Mediterranean, but the Crusades accelerated it. More exotic goods entered Europe than ever before, especially spices like pepper and cinnamon. They came with other consumables like sugar, dates, pistachio nuts, watermelons, and lemons. Cotton cloth, Persian carpets, and Eastern clothing came as well. Fantastic stories told about these goods grew into legend. According to tale-tellers, cinnamon came from the nest of an Arabian bird who used this aromatic fruit as building material for its nests. Cassia trees grew in glens or lakes watched over by ferocious winged animals. Another story claimed that Egyptians harvested spices by stretching nets across the Nile River and catching powder like fish. And since the merchants had access to the Holy Land, a brisk trade in saints' relics also sprang up. Local wags said that enough pieces of the True Cross were sold to build Noah's Ark. Geoffrey Chaucer later satirized relic dealers as men selling pig bones from barrels. Whether or not the stories were true, the goods passed through the hands of Venetian merchants, but Genoa and Pisa also began to grow rich from East Roman and Asian trade. These states also became wealthy by ferrying crusaders to the Holy Land in exchange for a spiritually uplifting amount of money. Italian shipwrights even designed larger cargo ships with huge sliding doors that allowed crusading knights to ride their horses onto ramps and then land. Yet the Crusades were only part of a larger trend. Western Europe was becoming more stable. Powerful duchies, supported by large retinues of knights, ensured that warfare became more regulated, more seasonal, and less cruel. Suddenly, it was easier to move from here to there with large caches of goods. Even better, the medieval warm period began. Most of the continent had an almost Mediterranean climate. England became so warm that the south of the country supported vineyards and competed with the French in the wine trade. Population began to increase, trade expanded, and towns grew in size. On the North Sea coast, a dense network of trading towns emerged in Flanders, the modern-day Low Countries. Most of them dealt in the wool trade. England was home to 8 million sheep, and much of their wool went to Low Country cities like Antwerp to be made into fine clothes. Since England held the French wine-growing province of Gascony as well, a wine-for-wool trade emerged in the 11th and 12th centuries. Much of the established Italian trade went towards Flanders, up the Po and Rhone valleys into central and northern France. In order to exchange their goods, Flemish and Italian merchants began setting up the fabled trade fairs of Champagne, located in north-central France about halfway between Italy and Flanders. These annual fairs, held throughout the year, offered merchants from around Christendom the chance to come and sample the wares. A small city of tents sprang up, staffed by men from across the world who offered goods from Iceland to Portugal. Local officials and their sergeants patrolled the fairs, both to ensure that thieves stayed away and that merchants didn't cheat their customers. Local bishops drew sizable incomes by collecting rent from traders, while the Knights Templar held a monopoly on wool weighing. Peasants and their families came alongside knights and their ladies. They arrived on foot or on horseback, looking for bargains, trying to sell livestock, or simply to see the sights. Dancers, jugglers, acrobats, bears, and monkeys performed on the street corners. Jongleurs sang on the church steps, and the taverns did a lively trade. In short, while Europe remained a deeply rural society, it had developed a vibrant commercial sector. That wraps things up for this episode of The Legendarium. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.